that level of success in the mainstream, they had to sing in English.
Mm.
And Bad Bunny not only sings in Spanish, he sings in Puerto Rican Spanish, which if you're from a Latino community, you know that Puerto Rican Spanish is often seen as an inferior kind of Spanish.
Mm.
There's
Jean, for those who don't know, tell us who Bad Bunny is. Why is he such a big deal? If there is a middle-aged mom right now saying, Bad Bunny, I've heard of this Bad Bunny. Who is this Bad Bunny?
So Bad Bunny is the most powerful musician alive today. He is a Puerto Rican singer who has for a long time fused Latin trap and reggaeton. And kind of a defining characteristic of his music is that he sings almost entirely in Spanish. And he has transformed music across the globe by doing this unapologetically. He's repeatedly made history with his all Spanish language albums topping the music charts in defiance of what many people believed. Many Latino artists in the US used to believe that in order to have that level of success in the mainstream, they had to sing in English.
Mm.
And Bad Bunny not only sings in Spanish, he sings in Puerto Rican Spanish, which if you're from a Latino community, you know that Puerto Rican Spanish is often seen as an inferior kind of Spanish.
Mm.
There's a specific dialect. My mom is Puerto Rican, and she grew up speaking it, and it's this beautiful Spanish that blurs the S's at the end of words, and the R's are hummed instead of pronounced, and it's for a long time been seen as kind of a lesser Spanish, and Bad Bunny has fully embraced it as part of his identity, part of his music. And what you have is the entire world listening to it and loving it. Even when they don't understand most or any of what he's saying, they feel his emotion and they feel how authentic he's being in channeling his love for Puerto Rico, which is another defining characteristic of his music, that he's always sung for Puerto Ricans and about Puerto Ricans, unapologetically.
And you said, his Spanish is seen as a lesser Spanish, but also Puerto Rico. Folks, in the United States of America, this is why we probably need DEI and history and education. There are many of these folks, I've been watching them, these right-wing cultural agitators, provocateurs, frauds, who are saying, why are they having a Latino, a non-American perform? Can you talk to us about Puerto Rico real quick? Because a lot of people don't know.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people just otherize all Latinos, and they see all Latinos as being not American, but Puerto Ricans specifically, I mean, they're not immigrants. They are U.S. citizens. Most people don't understand this. Puerto Rico is a U.S. territory that Puerto Ricans are U.S. citizens, whether MAGA Republicans like it or not. But because most people are not educated and don't know the history, they think that he's not American. But Puerto Rico has long been a territory of the United States and is, in essence, a colony, and shows the ongoing existence of colonization and colonialism in our world.
And furthermore, folks, for those who don't know, Puerto Ricans are citizens, but they can't vote, but they can serve and die in the U.S. military. There is a continuing debate within Puerto Rico whether they should have independence or become the 51st state. Republicans don't want Puerto Rico to become the 51st state because they realize, if we make a mistake, we think Puerto Rico is going to go Democrat and give 2 more seats to the Democrats. And folks, look at this. Look how razor thin everything's going to be in the House and the Senate moving forward. But also, let's take it back, because the Trump administration in particular has had its sights on Puerto Rico, right? Mocking them, ridiculing them. Let's go back to the first administration. Talk to us about how Puerto Rico became a punchline and if you will, an annoyance for the Trump administration.
Yeah, I mean, there was that famous scene where after the hurricane, Trump went out there and was just throwing toilet paper and paper towels at Puerto Ricans in this extremely disrespectful way, as if what he was doing was helpful whatsoever, when in fact the U.S. government was entirely failing to do anything meaningful in response to this environmental crisis. And then you had, of course, this Republican that spoke out during this. Remind me of the conference when they were talking about Puerto Rico as a floating island of
I
garbage.
was going to go that this was right before the election, the latest election, where Tony Hinchcliffe and a whole bunch of other right wing speakers and comedians in Madison Square Garden just said a whole bunch of racist, misogynist, anti black, anti Muslim stuff. But Tony Hinchcliffe said the punchline was Puerto Rico, floating island, floating garbage.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, the disrespect for Puerto Rico from the Republican Party and from, frankly, both parties for many, many decades is just heartbreaking, honestly, for somebody whose family is from there and who was forced to leave as a result of the U.S. turning Puerto Rico into a colonial experiment for corporate extraction. Most people don't realize that most Puerto Ricans actually don't live in Puerto Rico anymore. Most Puerto Ricans are now diaspora in the mainland US because of the fact that these experiments in neocolonialism, when they turned all of Puerto Rico into what's called the special economic zone, where corporations can operate with impunity and get away with paying almost no taxes. And in fact, Puerto Rican taxpayers are the ones who are forced to pay for the infrastructure for these corporations and to guarantee federally backed loans. As a result of all of this, most Puerto Ricans have been forced to leave the island. And that's why Bad Bunny is so radical, not only because of his embrace of Spanish and Puerto Rican Spanish, not only because of his celebration of Puerto Rican culture, but because he is overtly anti-colonialist in his messaging. His songs like El Apagón and more recently Lo que le pasó a Hawaii, he calls on Puerto Ricans to hold on to their traditions and to their to their land in defiance of corporations and foreigners who are coming in and taking it, um, often by force.
And so, folks, for those who don't know, yes, Puerto Ricans are citizens who can fight in our military, have died in service in America, but can't vote. Um, Consistently by both political parties have been kind of shunned and forgotten, have been a playground for corporate exploitation. As Gene said, so many people want to live in Puerto Rico, but they had to leave just to make ends meet. It is a protectorate, which is in limbo. According to Jean, she says, that even within, I'm sure, the Latino communities, oh, the inferior Spanish, oh, Puerto Ricans, you're like, there's a ranking even in South Asia, even within Muslims, right? I'm just being blunt, right? Who's at the top, who's at the bottom based on skin color and based on, who has the better culture and based on language and wealth. And so here comes Bad Bunny, Puerto Rican, speaks in Spanish, sings in Spanish, doesn't give an F, embraces the identity. And now he is the most streamed artist on Spotify. And about 6 days ago, he just won, this is big, album of the year for his sixth solo album, but the first ever album of the year in Grammys, not Latin Grammy, not Spanish Grammy. The album of the year was the first ever Spanish only album, and it went to Bad Bunny. And can you tell everyone right when he accepted his award, he said, "Before I thank God," what did he say?
He said, "Before I say thanks to God, I'm going to say ice out." He was responding to the federal immigration forces that have been occupying U.S. cities and terrorizing Latino communities across the U.S. And a lot of people were watching, hoping that he was going to say something, but unsure because he's gotten so powerful that it's often power corrupts. And what's consistent about Bad Bunny is that no matter how powerful he's gotten, he's continued to stand up for the marginalized and specifically for Puerto Ricans, but in this case, for all US Latinos who are facing kidnapping by federal agents who are, as you know, as you've been reporting for a long time, kidnapping people from their communities based on the color of their skin and their language.
And the fact that he said it, folks, it was album of the year. Everyone was expecting him to win based on what Gene said. His history, his identity, his music. They're like, man, if Bad Bunny wins, will he say something? And go back and check it out. That became one of the top 3 stories. He used that platform to openly say ice out. Then he talked about love instead of hate. And also, folks, he was chosen while all this is happening. And now he is chosen as the halftime show for the biggest show in America. Like it is the Super Bowl, folks, isn't just a game. It is like an American tradition, the most watched show in America, something that defines America, something that we represent and show to the world. And Jay-Z chose Bad Bunny. The significance of Bad Bunny. Let's be proactive and positive before we get to our friendly neighborhood fascist, Gene. The power of Bad Bunny as the halftime Super Bowl musician.
Yeah, well, first of all, the power of him is it's a complete it goes against this entire assault on multiculturalism and this assault on multilingualism that the MAGA movement is all about. Um, they want English to be the only language of the United States. We saw Trump pass his executive order um, last year, and at the same time as this is happening and you're seeing the spread of the English only movement, you're seeing the global rise of Bad Bunny. And so to have him performing on the most American stage in Spanish, unapologetically proud of who he is, who his people are, where he comes from, is historic. It is historic in a way that I can't even put into words because it's not just about making history. It's about how that's going to make so many people feel as they're watching him. People who have been taught, like I was when I was a child, to be ashamed of our first language, Spanish. People who have been taught to be ashamed of our culture. He is inviting us. He's calling us back to ourselves, as I wrote in my essay. That's what he's been doing all along. He's been giving us permission to be who we've always been, and to embrace our roots and to feel whole and to feel like we belong. So that I think is the ultimate significance. It's not just breaking barriers. It's going to be helping so many people in a way that I can't fully articulate.
No, I think you did. You articulated very beautifully in a very personal essay, which is fantastic, brilliantly written, where you brought the personal into the political and explained through your own journey why this is significant. First and foremost, it's going to be very inspiring for millions of people around the world, especially as multiculturalism is under attack, DEI is under attack, our books are being banned, our teachers are being fired. Literally, we are disappearing, being kidnapped. Donald Trump openly says they come from shithole countries. He's talking about Puerto Ricans. He's talking about Muslims. Talking about Arabs. All right. He openly says it now. He said it in the first Trump administration, and then they lied. He said, "I never said that," and now he's like, "Yeah, I did." Shithole countries, garbage people, whatever. And Stephen Miller is accelerating his white supremacist project. And as this is happening, from the top down, and we've seen all these cowards bend the knee. Paul Weiss, the law firm, bends the knee. Apple bends the knee. Amazon bends the knee. Spotify bends the knee. I love it. Spotify bends the knee and airs ICE ads, and their number one streaming artist on Spotify is Bad Bunny. Despite this all-out violent, illegal, and fascist assault on black and brown bodies, and now white bodies, you will have Bad Bunny shaking his brownness, his hips, singing openly in Spanish. And he said something which really triggered Sage Steele and all these other people. I think a couple of months ago when it was announced that he was gonna sing, they're like, "Are you gonna sing in English or Spanish?" He goes, "I'm gonna sing how I always sing, in Spanish. You got 2 months to learn a language." And they're like, "How dare you got 4 months to learn that language?" And like, "How dare he? He comes in and says this." Blah. I'm not making it up, folks. Go check out the clip. But you talk about colonization. And before we get to your personal story, let's talk meta for a second, because colonization just isn't boots on the ground. Colonization just isn't extracting the resources and raping the earth. Colonization, Gene, is also of the mind, and that's the trauma that lingers and is generational. Talk to us about the colonization aspect of this and how it relates to Bad Bunny.
Yeah, well, so first of all, I just want to go back to that moment that you described at the Grammys. Right before he went on stage and said "Ice Out," he was embodying for all of the Americans who were watching him what it means to be anti-colonialist in the way that you show up in the world. Because he literally took 20 seconds after he was announced the winner to stop and just
Compose
feel,
himself. Yeah.
compose himself, but also feel it.
Yeah.
Feel it. Let himself feel the significance of what that meant, not just for himself, but for all of the people who love his music. Um, So it's a radical way to be, and it goes against what so many Latinos in the United States have been taught. Like I grew up in in Southern California when Governor Pete Wilson was talking about innovation at the border and um, English. California passed a proposition that was a precursor to Trump's executive order of defining English as the language of the United States. Um, and that made English the California state language.
And also the war. I'm in the Bay Area. The war on Ebonics. Remember that?
Wait, what? Remind me.
The war on Ebonics. We
Oh my
got
God,
it.
it's
We
coming
had
back.
Yeah, bringing back. Sorry, didn't mean to traumatize you. Yeah, they're like, oh, we could only speak these black kids Ebonics, and look at them. Why can't they pull their pants up and hip hop and Snoop Dogg? So it was happening both to black folks, basically all non-white folks were told to assimilate or else.
Yeah, but so I mean, this is happening in a context now. I mean, so there's U.S. Latinos who are trending. They did trend right in the last election, and especially Latino men, because they're internalizing these ideas about Americanness being exclusionary of Latinidad, and so the fact that you have someone like Bad Bunny who's challenging that in his music, in the way that he shows up in his performances, which his performance is going to be. I mean, I'm almost certain that he's going to do a performance of El Baile Inolvidable, which is his song about the unforgettable dance about salsa music and salsa dancing. And he's popularizing these radical things. I mean, people think it's just about culture, but it really isn't just about culture. I mean, Latin social dancing, like salsa dancing, has historically been used in political resistance to cultivate resilience in these movements. In Puerto Rico, actually, there were protests that revolved around perreo, which is this most structureless Latin social dance that Bad Bunny participated in that led to the resignation of the then governor. So he's popularizing all of these practices, these cultural practices that are fundamentally political and radical. And most people, unfortunately, I think they listen to Bad Bunny and they have no idea about any of this.
Yeah.
Um, they just think he's kind of sensual and fun. Um, but I think what's happening is that because of what he's doing, a lot of people are starting to, and I know this to be a fact. So you're seeing people taking Spanish classes, and specifically Puerto Rican Spanish classes, because they want to understand what he's saying. So you're seeing an awakening happening in the American public at the same time as Trump is trying to brainwash everybody into thinking that Americans, that America should be white and should only speak English. Um, and that it has this mythic past where white men can do no wrong. Bad Bunny is opening people's eyes through his music because they're reading his lyrics, they're listening to his lyrics, they're starting to understand what his music is really about. And it's about a lot of things, but it's fundamentally anti-colonialist, and it's about slowing down, it's about loving what you are bound to lose. It's about being present, the way that he was at the Grammys when he was announced the winner. And all of these things are things that Trump doesn't want in our society. And the MAGA movement, they don't want us to be present with each other. They don't want us to feel for our neighbors. And Bad Bunny is teaching people to do that.
And they don't want bodies in the street. They don't want bodies with joy. They don't want music and political messages through music that will resonate, because culture, politics is downstream from culture. I agree with Breitbart. He understood that very correctly. And so now you have essentially even people who just like his music. Now Trojan horse through his music is this very deliberate, intentional music of resistance and love and joy and identity. And just a personal story before we get to your personal story, it's not just Latinos, right? It's basically anyone who is seen as the other in America. Because when I was growing up, I shared about this. You read my book. You were very kind to give it a nice blurb. You are taught if you're not white, Christian male, straight, growing up in the 80s and 90s, even now, especially now with Donald Trump and this administration, you at best can be a sidekick, or you're the supervillain, or you're completely excised from the story. And when I was growing up, all the billboards, no one looked like you and me, Gene. The hero never looked like me. People like me never got to kiss the beautiful girl. We never got to beat up the supervillain, right? I remember it was in college when I had a teacher who looked like me, and when I first read a book that had someone like me as a character in that book, right? So many of us who grow up like this, what you internalize, folks, and it takes a lot. It takes a lot of protection and love and care from family and parents to protect you, and not just to protect you from this, but also to build up the pride, not arrogance, but pride in your curly hair, in your afro, in your non-blue eyes, in your brown skin, right? I remember when I was growing up, I shared this in the book. It even infiltrated me, even though I always joke that my family, they didn't burn the boat, they brought the boat inside the home. They gave zero F's about assimilation. Like they didn't care. They're like, we'll name him Wajahat to we won't teach them English. Who needs English, right? So they gave zero F. So I grew up very proud, Desi, Muslim, American. But I remember it seeps through, Gene. I was sixth grade, and I remember I came home one day and I told my mom, "Mother, can you give me an English name?" And she's like, "What are you talking about? Give me an American name." And she's like, "Your name is Wajad. What the hell are you talking about?" And I said, I didn't choose William. I didn't choose Walter. I said, "I'll let you keep the W." And I chose Wilbur because we were reading Charlotte's Web, and everyone liked, remember the pig was named Wilbur? Everyone liked the pig. So I'm like, maybe everyone will like me and I'll fit it. My mother's like, "Your name is Vajad. Never come back and talk to me again." But it's just an example. Even my daughter, Gina, I wrote about this, I think for the New York Times, was a couple of years ago. My wife and I, very like brown dolls, black dolls, white dolls, brown culture, you're beautiful, your skin, not arrogance, but just pride. And one day I remember a couple years ago, my daughter came to us and said, "I don't like my brown skin." And I'm like, F this. Emergency, DEFCON 1, got all the grandparents, got all the aunts on the phone. I'm like, we have to like just tell her how beautiful she is. So we did like a 2-month brainwashing. We're like, "You're beautiful, your skin's beautiful." And then 2 months later, she's like, "I love my brown skin." We're like, "Oh." But the reason thank you for letting me indulge. But the reason I'm sharing this is you see how despite your fortress, despite the bulwark, despite the defenses, it cracks through. It cracks through. And you mentioned it beautifully in your piece that here you grew up, your mom's Puerto Rican, your father's Mexican, you grew up in California. You would think I could flex, but even you had this moment of doubt and self-loathing. Talk to us about why Bad Bunny was so instrumental in you rediscovering these
Yeah.
aspects of yourself that you buried.
Yeah, so I mean, I grew up, I went to a school where they actually forbade us to speak Spanish. If we got caught speaking Spanish, which was my first language, we had to go to detention and write, "I will not speak Spanish," 100 times. So I, as a goody
Wow.
two-shoes who wanted to get good grades, I was like, "Oh, Spanish is bad." Like, I don't wanna be one of the bad kids. Like, I started to associate Spanish with a criminality. Like, in my head, I was like, I don't wanna be a criminal. I don't wanna be a lawbreaker. I'm gonna follow the rules, and I'm gonna speak English. And unfortunately, this meant that I lost my native language for a long time until I moved to Mexico many years later. But I lost my ability to speak to my grandmothers who can only speak Spanish.
Mm.
Uh, I mean, that's changed since then, but for much of my childhood and adolescence, I lost that ability. And eventually I
Wait,
fall
this school was in California?
yeah, I was a private elementary and middle school that my
Can you
mom
name it?
it was called St. John's.
God, that's terrible. I'm sorry, continue. I was just I was with you, but then it just hit me. You're like, "What the?" This is anyway, sorry, continue.
Yeah, I mean,
That's terrible.
this used to be very common, but people still find it shocking because this was happening in the '90s, which people thought by then that things were a little more civilized, but no, they were not. Um, so I strove to sort of model myself as a proper American girl. I read the Dear America Scholastic books and just tried my best to come off as that way.
And
Uh,
what, Gene, can I American, American means what? You said proper American girl. Define in your mind what American was at that time.
to me, it was whiteness. It was English language. It was also rigidity. Like I became more rigid as a result of I just wanted to behave like proper.
Mm.
In a way that completely burned my sensuality, my connection to my body, my ability to move in joyful ways for much of my life. But when I moved to Mexico to be a journalist down there, which I did because I started to have my eyes open when I was in high school, and I found books like Luis Alberto Urrea's The Devil's Highway that
Mm.
that that showed the deadly consequences of border militarization, and other books like Eduardo Galeano's The Open Veins of Latin America, which talk about
Keep talking. Keep talking.
the US pillaging of the region. And so I wanted to be a correspondent in Mexico to expose some of what was happening that I didn't realize until I was in high school was happening. And that's when I started listening to people like Residente, who and Calle 13. Residente is an artist from the Puerto Rican band Calle 13, and Residente was a mentor of Bad Bunny's, and he had this song called Latino America, which is a celebration of the land in the region and a critique of corporate extraction. And I was just so moved by that music, and I eventually started listening to Bad Bunny, your kitty, and also was just I felt so proud of aspects of myself that I had been taught to devalue, and I started doing deep digging into my Puerto Rican roots, and I learned about my a number of um, two of my grandmothers on my mom's side were black. Great grandmothers were black, and this was something that was hidden and it's frequently hidden. There's actually a song in Puerto Rico that's called "Y tu abuela donde está," um, where at least that's one of the lines in the song, and it's about like hiding your black grandmother. This is a very common thing, because Puerto Ricans, after they were taken over by the US, learned that they needed to distance themselves however they could from blackness, because
And
blackness,
run towards whiteness.
yeah. And so you actually saw a huge surge in white identification on the island in the years after US colonization. And
It's
and so anyway, Bad Bunny opened my eyes to all of this. Like I mean, I knew I was already having my eyes open in high school and in my 20s, and but then I moved back to the US. I started reporting on border and immigration issues, and I started learning a lot more about Puerto Rico because of Bad Bunny. Puerto Rico is not there's not a lot of Puerto Ricans in California, which is where I live. It's less than 1% of the population. So I knew a lot about Mexico, but I knew very little about Puerto Rico, and Bad Bunny's music is what awakened me to that, just like he's awakening so many people. There's courses being taught at universities across the United States about Puerto Rican history that are only popular because and only possible because of Bad Bunny, because Bad Bunny, these teachers use Bad Bunny to draw students in and to educate them. But that's the whole thing. But he's been Trojan horsing this all along, and it's so beautiful.
And it's so fascinating because the more Bad Bunny becomes popular, the more Americans will learn about Puerto Rico, the more they will learn about colonization, the more they will learn about, oh, these are citizens. Oh, we have abandoned them. Oh, they need help during this horrific natural disaster. Oh, maybe we should make them into us. It's in our interest to protect our democracy, into maybe making them into a state so they will get not just rights, but oh, maybe those 2 extra seats could be the difference between fascism and not. So, by the way, this is Billu. He liked your voice and he liked what you're saying, so he came. So, and anytime the cat appears, more and more people watch and give hearts, which will help Eugene. So don't be offended. Right now, I'm home alone, so I have to look at the cat. But you mentioned in your piece how literally Bad Bunny restored you physically and spiritually. And I was reading it, I'm like, I don't know. I was reading it, I'm like, I don't know, Gene. This seems like a stretch. And then I was reading and I learned a little bit more about you, um, and why you do the amazing things that you do. And you saw him twice, and you mentioned it. But talk to us about how Bad Bunny and the music literally brought you back to life.
Yeah, so it was actually because I went to go see him at Coachella in 2023, which is he was making history as the first Latino act to headline that music festival, which is the only reason that I went. And during that incredible performance, he had this video montage about the history of salsa music and salsa dancing. And they also had this incredible performance of salsa dancers on the stage. And I was just mesmerized. And I remember feeling like, because at the time I was struggling with these recurring health issues that had started when I wrote my Stephen Miller book. My immune system started to attack my thyroid. I had these recurring issues with my thyroid that would lead me to feel very exhausted. And anyway, I was watching that and I just felt like, man, like I've been trying to find ways to get healthy. I've been swimming, I've been taking yoga classes, I've been doing all these things and they haven't helped. And I'm like, well, maybe I can take some salsa dancing classes and it'll actually get me in touch with my sensuality in a way that I've never been before.
The
And
rigidity that was you were trained in, you were locked into that rigidity when you were literally told to erase your identity because it was seen as unclean and dirty.
exactly. Yeah, I remember as a kid, I renounced Latin music because I told myself, "Oh, it's hypersexual. I can't listen to Latin music because it's hypersexual." That's how I saw it, um, because I was brainwashed. And so I started taking salsa classes weeks after that concert, salsa dancing classes, and I found myself completely transformed. I had tried so many things, Waj, to feel better. Like I said, I was taking yoga, I was swimming, I was longboard dancing, I was dancing on my longboard, but I just kept every time I would plug back into the news cycle, the anxiety and the stress of it would trigger my health issues and I would start to feel like I couldn't keep going. Like I started to think I might not be able to stay in journalism because the anxiety was so tied up with my physical self and how I felt like I would sit at my desk and I would feel like I was on fire. And that was the thyroid. It would make me feel like I was super hot and super exhausted and I couldn't even sit at my desk without feeling completely winded. But anyway, I
And
found
also you spend time on Hate Monger, which is I would not want to spend any time thinking about Stephen Miller, but we have to. And then all the resulting horrible death threats and vile things that you got as a result of publishing that book and warning America, well, about who he was.
Yeah, so at the time I was the only Latina columnist, the only Latina opinion columnist at the Los Angeles Times, and I was getting a lot of harassment and just obsessive coverage on right-wing media that also contributed to the anxiety, that contributed to the physical health issues. And so I started salsa dancing, and I loved it so much that I started dancing like 4 or 5 nights a week. And it just completely like all of my health issues went away. I've not had to deal with them since then, and it's been I started in August of 2023. So it's been years. And I think it's because it just put me in touch with my body. It slowed me down. It completely rearranged me physiologically. My nervous system, it just completely calmed me down. Um, and made me it just transformed my relationship to work. It transformed my relationship to my body, to fear. I just didn't feel afraid anymore. I didn't feel anxious, nearly as anxious anymore.
Uh,
Uh,
and people, I've said this to Jean before. I've known her for several years. As I go through her Instagram because she's like cool. She's like the cool journalist because like she goes to like raves in Coachella and she does like longboarding and she does all like salsa dancing. And I'm gonna reveal a little bit too much about myself. I've always envied people who could skateboard, athletes, and dance. I have two left feet. I'm flat footed. I have a bad back. My wife and like my friends say literally you are the worst dancer we've ever seen in our life. Like, there's no one worse than you. And I'm like, correct. But my wife says I could like
me either. It was
the
me.
top part stays on beat. Like I actually find the rhythm, but the body is uncoordinated. So like anyone, in all seriousness, anyone who can express themselves to dance, ever since I was young, I really admired them based on what you said, because you let go, right? Not only do you let go of the rigidity and all the mental trappings and what will people say, you're in the moment, it's fluid. You're using your body to move and express yourself. And I'm like, that must be such a liberating experience that I will
You-
never get to have because I'm a middle-aged man with but no rhythm and flat foot.
I mean, I think you can have it, Wash. I really do. You just have to take a salsa dancing class, like Bad Bunny
They
is
will
called.
kick me out, Gene. They will say literally you are defaming salsa. You're defaming our ancestors. Leave, and I won't even apologize. I'll give my money back.
But the reason it works is because so not only so you really have to slow down because in order to feel the cues of the other dancer, you have to completely quiet all anticipation. You can't be trying to guess what's going to happen next. You have to be totally present in your body and in the moment, and that means that you don't have a single thought in your head, which to me was a new experience, to not have any thoughts. Um, and but it's a healing experience. It's like we need to know what's going on in our bodies and be able to feel what's going on in our bodies. And that's what Bad Bunny did for me. And I know he's doing that for so many other people, because we're actually seeing a resurgence and a revival around salsa dancing and some of the other Latin social dances, thanks to his music. Um, and I think after the Super Bowl, it's only going to intensify, because I'm pretty sure he's going to be doing some. They're going to have some salsa dancing up.
You mentioned it briefly. I want to talk about it because you mentioned in your piece as well. The how salsa dancing in particular and music, especially in the public with a community, is
Yep.
a very deliberate part of resisting colonization. Um, can you go a bit deeper into that?
Yeah. So, I mean, these are dances that across the Americas have fused strangers in restaurants, in alleyways, in nightclubs, and strangers from all walks of life. Like, they fundamentally are corrosive to the politics of division and the politics of isolation, because they bring together they bring together people of all different races and classes. So you'll find farm workers, gardeners, construction workers dancing with in finance, people in finance, with filmmakers, with all kinds of business people. I actually once saw on the dance floor a Trump supporter, like in complete ecstatic harmony with a
Mm.
prison abolitionist. And this is normal on the dance floor. So it really, I think it's revolutionary, not only for our polarization, but also for and like a direct challenge to Trump's dehumanization and scapegoating. It's also just I think a pathway out of our loneliness crisis, and we're
Movement, rhythm, connection, community, it releases endorphins, which is why so many people say dance, and specifically when it's intentional, it can be something very powerful, right? Something very spiritual. And, I did Hajj before, and during the Hajj process, you got all these people from you have no idea who they are, Gene. And they could be rich, they could be poor, you have no idea, and you're like just like surfing. You're like in rhythm going from one destination to another. Especially in the Mount Arafah, I was like, this is, and everyone's helping each other. I literally said it was like a spiritual rock concert because you're going from one destination to the other. People are like helping you out. Someone's giving you water. I don't know this person. Another person's giving you like an orange juice. There was an old lady, elderly lady, another old woman was pushing her. I'm like, you want me to help? She's thank you. So now I'm helping this old lady. She said, like, pats me on the, but I felt like, for some people who don't get to experience that from a religious or spiritual point of view, they're like, it's okay. I have dance. I have community. And that way, if you're just dancing in community, that is very dangerous. A lot of brown bodies in the street dancing in community with
organ-
joy,
yeah.
resisting a fascist regime. If I'm a fascist, that's dangerous. I want to crush that. And, it's also within African American cultures with music, with jazz, with rhythm and blues. Ishmael Reed wrote about it in the novel Mumbo Jumbo. The biggest threat in the fictional novel Mumbo Jumbo to this white nationalist regime is this dance where if you get you sit there and you're rigid, but it's called JES grew, just grew. So like you come into contact with it, it's like a virus, and all of a sudden people start moving their bodies, and like, why are people moving their bodies, right? So this is something that is like it's universal. This type of rhythm and music that moves people and kind of I wouldn't say like instead of taking over, it detoxifies, it reprograms them, it deprograms them, right,
That's
from
really
this kind of mass psychosis.
100%. Yeah, I mean, that's exactly right. I mean, it also just changes human beings' relationship to time. Like, things that used to, well, so I used to be somebody who was always the first to arrive to everything because I was so anxious, and I'm like, oh my god, this thing is happening. I better be there early. And after I started dancing, because of the amount of presence that it cultivated in me, like, I'm often late to social events. If they're not, if they're not super important, I will be late, and I don't do it on purpose, but it's just because I'm so um, present now, and I think that is a challenge to the economies of extraction that are a key part of the MAGA movement, because they claim it's all about nationalism and patriotism, and they're using racism, and they're using hate mongering to rally the masses. But at the end of the day, it's about being able to extract from us and extract from historically marginalized communities with impunity. And so when you have an artist like Bad Bunny who is popularizing music and dances that are rooted in resistance to those economies of extraction, then of course you're going to see a meltdown like what we saw
That's
where
what it is. It's literally a meltdown. Can you talk to us for those who haven't followed? Because, folks, tomorrow's the Super Bowl. We'll publish this tomorrow because I'll tell you why we'll publish it tomorrow. But I guarantee you, tomorrow night and on Monday, one of the top five items of discussion will be Bad Bunny's Super Bowl performance and a manufactured outrage and meltdown by the right wing because it's going to be a distraction from, the 19 crises thanks to the Trump administration. Why are they so freaked out? Can you talk to us about why they're freaked out for the people who haven't followed?
well, okay, so I mean, to start with, he is singing in Spanish. He is celebrating Puerto Rico, which we've been talking about. But I mean, you had Trump call him a terrible choice. You have Turning Point USA creating an alternate halftime show. They're desperately trying to distract people from what he's going to do because it is such a threat to
Can you
their
tell him the headliner? Tell him the headliner.
Kid Rock.
Isn't that so perfect? Like the quintessential example of trash culture. Kid Rock is the headliner for the white nationalist American Turning Point USA super Christian parallel, if you will, or counter programming to Bad Bunny. Kid Rock.
Yeah, they claim it's like about faith and family, but what they're terrified of is they're terrified of their kids seeing the beauty of Puerto Rican culture and hearing Bad Bunny talk about love and compassion and being kind to one another. That's ultimately what they're afraid of. Um, but I think what this is about, I think so. Of course, there's the racism. There's the whole English only thing. There's the war on multiculturalism that they don't want this because of all of that. But I think what's deeper here, especially when it comes to Trump, is that he is anti-colonialist in a way that threatens his Don Roe doctrine, however you say it. His
Down road doctrine. Some people call it the down road doctrine.
I've been looking into his interference in Latin America and how it all connects because it looks like a jumble of contradictory actions. Like, why is he pardoning the most well-known drug trafficker in the Western Hemisphere, who is the former president of Honduras, and putting his party back in power at the same time as MS-13 is going around telling people to vote for that same candidate? Like, why is he doing that at the same time as he's going after the president of Venezuela for alleged drug trafficking charges, at the same time as he's supposedly, at the same time as he's threatening to bomb cartels in Mexico, and claiming to be against drug traffickers, and claiming to be against immigration, when like the former drug trafficker that he pardoned, who was the president of Honduras, previously, he oversaw the one of the largest surges in migration from Central America that the region had ever seen. And it's like, how does any of this make sense? And I know it sounds very confusing because it is kind of confusing, but then you start connecting the dots, and it's all about empowering or expanding territorial control for a class of transnational elites
Yep.
who want to be able to operate with impunity in all of these countries. And
Epstein, Peter Thiel, Elon Musk. Sorry, continue.
so in Honduras, it's the reason he meddled in elections in Honduras is because of a special economic zone in the island of Roatan in Honduras that was backed by billionaires like Peter, including Peter Thiel and Mark Andreessen, who are Trump allies. And that special economic zone was under threat because the democratically elected progressive president, Xiomara Castro, had said that it was a violation of Honduran sovereignty, which it was, because that special economic zone, the startup city there, had its own laws. It's a semi-autonomous zone that's ruled by corporations that don't pay taxes. And if this sounds familiar, it's because it started in Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico was where this all started. This is why Bad Bunny is so significant, I think, politically to what Trump is doing and poses such a threat, because he is informing the American public about what this is all about at the end of the day. And it's not about nations, it's not about borders. It is about enabling this pillaging class to do whatever they want, to take people's land, even if that means displacing people, which is what we've seen and what we're going to continue to see. I spoke to some indigenous, Afro-Indigenous activists in Honduras who were telling me that they've been fighting Prospera because they want to be able to stay on their land. They don't want to have to migrate. Most
Prospera is one of the Broligarch's quote unquote free cities that will be an example of their that will help them create the network state, which is translation techno fascism. They carve up the world, and Peter Thiel and Bezos, Musk, Alex Karp, and a few others will be the rulers of all of us because they believe capitalism is incompatible with democracy.
Exactly. They don't want governments, they don't want democracy, they want corporations to be in charge. And that's what it's about. They're accelerating the decline of the nation state. And the startup city Prospera, as you named it, thank you. It's a model for what they want to bring to the United States. They're doing this all over the world, but they've been whispering in Trump's ear about bringing they brand them as freedom cities, but they're these startup cities in special economic zones that historically what they do is they displace people. They force people out of their homes because they completely siphon off resources and opportunities for the rich, for the transnational elites who are not paying taxes, who do not have any vested interest in actual economic development, even though that's the banner that they always wave.
It's
But
the criminal transnational network, which Sarah Kendzior has been warning about for years, and now you're seeing it in real time, where literally they're openly promoting freedom cities, Praxis, Prospera. This is why we need Greenland. And you saw Donald Trump illegally invade Venezuela, illegally kidnap Maduro, illegally steal the oil, and of course, I don't know. I just think it should be bigger news, but we forget because there's 37 fires. He stole the oil, sold the oil, and put the oil in an offshore account for Qatar because that's what helps America, right? And then he gave $40 billion to his buddy Javier Milei in Argentina, and now he's threatening Cuba, and now he's threatening Colombia, and he's threatening Mexico, and he says he's going to take over Canada, and he wants to undo NATO and take over Greenland. It's all happening in real time, and the reason why I spend a little bit of time on that, Gene, is people might listen to you and say that's crazy talk. No way. It's literally happening in real time. What did I miss?
no, that's exactly right. Yeah, I mean, it's happening, and if you look, because I think a lot of people are just, as you mentioned, like they're just oversaturated with crisis, and so it's like, okay, I'm going to focus on what's going on in the U.S. because it's crazy enough here, but you cannot understand what is happening here if you don't look to what's happening in places like Honduras, because that is ultimately the model of governance that they want to import here, and why we are seeing so many parts of the U.S. begin to look like the parts of, or the version of Latin America that was created by U.S. corporations and their foreign interference. Trump likes to say, like, "Oh, the U.S. is turning into the third world because of immigration." No, it is becoming an image of the Latin America that you created, that the U.S. created, which is a place where people are kidnapped by masked agents in unmarked vans, places where human rights activists are publicly shot dead on the street. Um, these are things that have been
Drug
happening for a long
trafficking,
time.
sex trafficking, open corruption, no accountability.
Yeah, and people a lot of people think, okay, like these are when people talk about the root causes of immigration from Latin America, people often cite poverty and violence as if these things are innate to the people or to the region. But all of these things are symptoms of this extraction and impunity that we're talking about on the part of corporate elites who do not respect borders, do not respect nations, do not respect democracies or human rights. And so I think that is sort of the connecting line that I wanted to make. And
Where Puerto Rico was the laboratory for their international supervillain endgame.
exactly. It
And
started in
also Palestine. Look at Palestine. Everyone's like, "Oh, can you imagine what's happening in Minnesota?" I'm like, "I've been to the West Bank 3 times." Yeah, that's what happens when you have Israel train your CBP officers. That's what happens when Alex Carr proudly says, "I'm giving Palantir technology to help Israel in its genocide." That's what happens when you give all this money to Israel and stand by as they violate the rule of law. Yep. It looks like Palestine to me, West Bank. You get stopped routinely, people disappear, people get beaten up, no accountability. People who get shot are called terrorists.
Mhm.
Checkpoints.
Mhm. Yep. And and honestly, Wash, it's clarified some things for me about Stephen Miller, who I wrote the biography about several years ago. He was, as I've said many, many times, deeply influenced by white supremacist and white nationalist ideas, which is why he has focused on not going after criminals or cartels or sex traffickers, but rather on ordinary valued community members at 7-Elevens and Home Depots, because it's about ultimately racially reengineering the demographics of this country. But as I've been watching what Trump has been doing under this administration, I've been trying to square it. Like, how does it fit with Stephen Miller? Because they're actually creating the conditions in Latin America that are going to fuel um, ongoing instability and ongoing displacement. And if you look at Trump and all the people that he's stripped of legal status, he's actually created a larger undocumented population than he has removed through deportations. So it's like, how does all of this square? And it's like, oh yeah, well, so Stephen Miller, since he was in high school, before he was deeply racist, he was classist. That is why he ran for student government on this platform of I don't want to pick up my trash. He ran on this platform of like I don't want to have to pick up my trash because we have janitors here who are paid to do
Yep.
it for us. And then in college, this was a recurring theme in my reporting, um, where, for example, his freshman year in his dormitory, the common area became filthy because people weren't picking up after themselves. And the dorm manager said, or the dorm manager posted a notice saying, you know, the custodial staff is not here to enable your filthy lifestyles. Please clean up after yourselves. And Stephen Miller, according to someone that I interviewed, posted a 2-page response saying, no, that's exactly what they're here for. Like, I pay tuition so that I don't have to pick up my trash. We have people here for that. And so at the end of the day, I think that's what this is about. This is about creating a permanent underclass, a manufactured underclass across the Americas. And to bring it back to Bad Bunny, he is preaching against that in his music and in his art. Like the way that he shows up in the world is no, I am powerful. I am beautiful. I deserve to be here to take up space. And as a Latino man, as a Puerto Rican man, I I deserve to be loved and I want to love other people. And this is just completely the opposite worldview that people like Stephen Miller and Trump have been perpetuating.
Well said. And if you need more examples of this, folks, what I've always said on the left hook, and if you just heard it from Jean, if you think I'm crazy, listen to her. She's much smarter than me. The three enduring sins of America are white supremacy, capitalism, and misogyny. And white supremacy cannot exist without capitalism. It goes like this. And if you look at the Epstein files, the latest drop, look at Epstein. He wants to openly undo the post World War II order, and he wants to reap the benefits of the chaos. That's why they're into crypto. He says we want to return to tribalism. He wants to escape, as Gene was saying, accountability. He wants to continue doing what he does, was raping girls, right? And if that means cozying up to Russia, cozying up to 4chan on the right wing, if that type of chaos can allow them to thrive and fill their coffers and indulge their appetites, then so be it. Peter Thiel didn't say no. He responded and said, you know what? Women and people of color shouldn't be allowed to vote. Jeffrey Epstein, also into eugenics, wanted to rebirth the human civilization through his species. Guess who's into eugenics also? Peter Thiel and Elon Musk and RFK. So the world.
Is about eugenics, in my opinion. Like they are creating a hub for human enhancement where they offer these gene therapies for life extension that cost tens of thousands of dollars and these implants, cybernetic implants, so you can become a cyborg. Um,
Transhumanism.
that's what it is. Exactly. And
Dr. Peter Attia, whose whole grift was longevity, folks, charging hundreds of thousands of dollars to his specific elite clientele of 60 people, billionaires and athletes and celebrities, mentioned hundreds of times in the Epstein files. They're obsessed with eugenics. They're obsessed with never dying like the pharaoh. They're obsessed with transhumanism. They believe AI will let them live forever. And not only let them live forever, going back to what Jean said, it will create a private military firm that will protect them from us and also then replace us to do the labor so they can make more money. The world is their playground. We are just inconveniences, and they're not going to use their wealth and their money to save the earth from climate change. They think the earth is done, which is why they're all investing in rockets because they believe they will repopulate humanity on Mars. Can't make this shit up. It's all there. Well, we've raped Earth. Let's go rape Mars. Let's go rape the moon.
Yeah,
Let's go colonize the spaces.
it, it's
Space
like,
Force, Space Wars.
and it's about reaching technological maturity at any expense, like you said, like even if that means destroying the earth, even if that means destroying all biological humans in the process, except for people like Elon Musk and Peter Thiel, like who cares? That's sort of the mentality of these transhumanists.
Yeah,
Um,
to me, it seems what connects them all and is with Stephen Miller, he's a white nationalist. With Russell Vought, who's the co-author of Project 2025, he's a white Christian nationalist. With Thiel's and Musk's and Andreessen Horowitz, they're techno-fascists. So what connects all of them? At the end of the day, it is white power. At the end of the day, it's white power and wealth. We want the wealth, we want the power, we want it in the hands of white men. What's colonization, folks? I'm sorry, for the past several centuries, it is who is deemed white, or, another word for it is European, Western. It's all bullshit because the Irish weren't considered white, the Italians weren't considered white. So whiteness, it's all social construct, but they think themselves white, even though Elon Musk is an immigrant from South Africa. Immigrants were in the Epstein files, Peter Thiel and Elon Musk, but I digress. No Puerto Ricans, no Bad Bunny, no trans athletes, no drag queens, no Somalis, no Haitians. And this is their end game. And Puerto Rico, bring it all back, folks. This has been happening throughout Central America and Latin America. It's been happening in Puerto Rico. Oh, Brown Island. Let's rape it, exploit and extract all its resources, condemn them to poverty and death, and then mock them and ridicule them as garbage people. And Bad Bunny says, nah, I have other ideas. Thank you so much, Jean, for taking the time. I want you to stay for an hour, but I told you if we're lucky on a Saturday, we'll get 1,000. We got 2,000 people on a Saturday. And folks, I Trojan horse this conversation because I was after Jean, who is a brilliant journalist who I've been following for a long time. She wrote the book Hate Monger, the book to read on Stephen Miller. She's, I think, the only Latina left at the New York Times as a contributing op-ed writer. There's
oh,
more.
yeah, Yarimaru Bonilla at the very
Yeah, two. She is also a visiting fellow at USC. But she called. I think was it 2 days ago? Was it yesterday? I don't know. Did you text me yesterday or 2 days ago?
it was like it was I can't remember. It was yesterday or 2 days ago. I can't
Yeah,
remember.
she's like, "Should I do Substack?" And on text, and I was like, "Yes." And then she's like, "I don't know." And then I think I called her and was a very lovingly aggressive Mr. Miyagi. And I said, "If you build it, they will come." And then she made a huge splash with a really beautiful, excellent, well written piece, which I'm posting right now, called "How Bad Bunny Became America's Most Dangerous Artist." And I strongly recommend people read it. And she also talked about Honduras just a couple of days ago in a New York Times article. I'm posting that as well. And then once we publish this tomorrow, and then we're going to publish it tomorrow right before the Super Bowl to maximize the number of eyeballs Jean's gets, because I wanted Jean to get all of my subscribers. So we want to give her a steroid injection of subscribers and give her a big splash on Substack. So anyone who's watching right now, there's 2,000 people. Go subscribe to Jean Guerrero. Jean, shamelessly promote your Substack that you just launched today.
Yeah, so I'm going to be publishing what I call dissident opinions and unheard perspectives. So these are my own perspectives on immigration, on US politics, with a focus on extremism and the extremism that has taken over, and also other young or emerging voices. I've created a boot camp, which is why the boot camp is called Our Unsilencing, and it's to uplift underrepresented perspectives in the opinion discourse, which is why I named my Substack The Unsilencing, because the whole idea is to unsilence communities that have long been suppressed especially in the political discourse and especially around opinion. And so that's what I'm going to be publishing is the opinions and voices that you don't normally hear in corporate media.
And also, I think was it last year? You were really kind enough to invite me to listen to some of these young up and coming Latina and Latino writers and
Yeah.
op-ed folks. So it's all this young talent that, in addition to Jean also sharing her opinions, she's mentoring this next generation to be very bold and proud, and not bend the knee to Bezos or billionaires and keep speaking out. They were very, very impressive. Okay, Jean, how much does it cost per month to subscribe to you?
Oh, I haven't figured that out yet.
Alright,
I
well, I know, I think you have it as $8. You can
yes.
change it up, but I think it's free. I think there's no paywall, but if you wanna help her, I think it's $8 right now. So go subscribe, folks, right now to Gene's Substack called Unsilenced. And also, folks, this is The Left Hook. I'm a terrible capitalist. Everything is free. There's no paywalls. I depend on the kindness of strangers. I'm like Blanche Dubois without the melodrama. I have a 25% off forever special. It's $3.75 forever for this month because in celebration of 100,000 subscribers. So if you have $3.75 and want to help, it's the lefthook.substack.com/special. If you have no money, that's okay. Just subscribe. If you have some money and say I have to choose between you and Gene, give it to Gene. And then next month, come back and for the price of a coffee, I don't know, become a subscriber. Thank you all for watching. Everyone, go subscribe right now to Gene's fantastic Substack. This was her first Substack post, and this is her first Substack live conversation from her new Substack. And I promised her 1,000 viewers, but we got her 2,000 on the live, and we'll give her a lot more when we publish this later. For those who missed it, don't fantastic conversation where Gene talks about who Bad Bunny is, why he's the number one stream Spotify artist, why he's such a big deal to so many people, not just people of color, but people, why the right wing is freaking out and will lose their it during the Super Bowl and afterwards, and how he's actually connected to the politics of resistance and decolonization. You're like, what? That's too much of a stretch. It isn't. I guarantee it. She connects the dots. And how Bad Bunny and music also literally helped to restore Jean after she spent a year writing about the world's worst people, white supremacists such as Stephen Miller. Thank you, Jean. Have a good weekend, everyone. I think I'm done for the weekend. I don't know. Enjoy your
Yeah.
family, take care of yourself, and everyone, please, oh, please don't be a fascist.
And tune into the halftime show.
Yeah, halftime show tomorrow. Bad Bunny. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Thanks, Wash.